Thank you. The special board meeting of the Board of Education for May 12, 2020 is called to order. The purpose of tonight's special meeting is to vote on complaint number 2020-07. In accordance with Board Policy 4.50.032P, the district sets forth the specific procedure for resolution of formal complaints by students, parents or guardians, and people who reside in the district in order to resolve complaints in a fair and timely manner. The content of the Step 3 complaint is subject to an executive session, specifically under ORS 192-6602F for complaints about public records. Board members are reminded to not discuss those confidential records as part of the deliberation or vote. The board will now vote. We'll get this on the table and then have an opportunity for discussion. The board will now vote on resolution number 6112 to uphold the superintendent's decision on a Step 3 appeal, complaint number 2020-07. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, shoot.
Second. Director Scott moves and Director DePass seconds the motion to adopt resolution 6112. Now we can have an opportunity for discussion. Roseanne, is something wrong?
Sorry, I wasn't muted.
So we're all.
I think that the recitation about the basis for the executive session was slightly misframed in the intro, Amy. We can just clarify that it related to confidential educational records, and that's why it was an executive session, not about public records.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounded a little bit off. Thank you. Do we have any questions or discussion that don't pertain to those confidential student records?
So I'm a little unclear as to what the staff recommendation is. In one of the reports, it said that we could develop a timeline. And a timeline was one of the specific requests of the complaint. So I'm not sure what I'm voting on.
I have the same question, Director Bailey. In the report, it says PPS could provide is the language.
I had that same question.
Superintendent, or perhaps that's Deputy Superintendent Cuellar. Would you like to give us a little guidance?
I'll go ahead and defer to, I know that specifically when we're talking about a timeline for the work around creating a scope and sequence and around the alignment with the report card, I know that both Dr. Valentino and Dr. Bird have been working on that, task force to get that work done. So I can let either of them share terms of where the progress is specific to that work group and what they anticipate for us to come to a conclusion around that work. So Dr. Bird or Dr. Valentino?
Good evening, everyone. Sean Bird, Chief of Schools. So we are going to convene the worker committee this Thursday. That's a committee made up of PAT leadership and members, as well as parents and staff members from OTL. And so we'll be meeting with them. They met some in the past. Again, we all agree that the report card for K-5 does need to change and needs to provide more authentic feedback for parents and more readily understandable feedback for parents also. It apparently is, there's a lot of fields on the report card now. And so we want to simplify it and make it easier to understand and read, and also align it to the content that's being covered in any given marking period. So we're going to have a discussion. We have some prototypes that have been developed by that we're going to look at this Thursday, and we want to we'll be working over the next several weeks to come to an agreement about what the new and improved report card should look like. I'll let Luis add anything to that because he was doing the work earlier.
So because what we do not want is a report card to be a standalone document that is only reflective of the teacher's evaluation of the students, but also expand out to have a more standardized approach to assessing the progress and growth of the student. Dr. Rose Brown is also part of that committee, and so that brings some of the context that we've been working on to align the MAP assessment to the SBAC and using the historical data around the progress of our students to determine where cutoffs could be, where concerns will emerge, and how we are going to be measuring over time so that we can make better decisions about, one, eliminating some of the more formative assessments that we have, or even some of the standard ones to cut back on the amount of testing that we do. But one of the things that we have to do first is to calibrate across all of our assessments. And so that is work that we are doing now and we will continue to do for the balance of next year. We are already making decisions about some of our initial assessments in the early grades, and we're going to be adjusting over the summer and into the fall to return time to teaching and eliminating some of the assessment time. So it's a continuous process, and I say that only because to give dates on what will happen when, it's going to be continuous, and we'll continue to get better at identifying what are the areas that we need to continue to lift up on, and what are the areas that we can sort of modify later. But in the process, we're hoping that the first thing that we do is between now and the start of the school year is to be able to say that we are identifying the elements that contribute to a report card that reflects all of the components of the assessment we have, all of the practices that are taking place. That would be the first step. Hopefully by the fall and the winter, we will have identified in a more formative way some of the targets that will become the final report card, so that by the spring of next year we can actually say that we have finalized the report card. That would be a thoughtful timeline to follow. I don't know if that's how we will land on it, but that would be the expected timeline at this moment.
It seems to me that if you could express in writing what you just stated, Dr. Valentino, to Mr. Cruz, that would be considerably more responsive to his complaint that we're considering now than what we have here as the superintendent's report. Because the reason he filed the step 3 complaint was because he hadn't seen a timeline or evidence of the alignment of those standards, even though I know that he has been in a lot of informal conversations. So at least to my mind and for my vote, I would like to see some kind of communication to Mr. Cruz outlining, even if it's only what you just described.
Yeah, it seems to me that we're essentially upholding Mr. Cruz's complaint by saying, and we're getting some, is anybody else getting a bunch of noise?
I think, Luis, that's you, if you could mute your phone.
There we go. Essentially upholding his complaint, that is agreeing with him that a timeline is a good and worthy thing, and not only to get those that framework in place, but also around professional development and implementation. I would guess that would be, you know, where the rubber meets the road for Mr. Cruz would be, when is this actually going to happen?
But we're not being asked to uphold his complaint. We're being asked to uphold the superintendent's decision on his appeal.
So I again, I'm not sure. You know, the appeal is basically, where's the timeline? And I'm not sure what the superintendent is saying about that timeline. Is the superintendent saying, yes, we'll give you a timeline, or we're doing what we can, there you go. And I don't see what's the clear response to his appeal. I'm not sure what what we're voting on here, or being asked to vote on.
I believe that we're voting on whether or not we think the superintendent's written response is a sufficient response to his appeal. And the two underlying questions of his appeal are, can I get a timeline and can I get some evidence of alignment of standards to the report card? And to my readings, the superintendent's response does not include that commitment. Is that the way you see it, Deputy Superintendent Cuellar?
We can include all of that in a response. I think Luis was talking about it at a very high level in terms of that, as we continue to look at curricular alignment through our scope and sequence, and as we look at a future curricular adoption, that the work is ever evolving, especially right now in our current reality. So for us to actually earmark a specific date and so early in terms of a curricular adoption, so early in terms of us working with teachers and parents on reimagining a new report card that would actually speak to not only a child's summative performance, but also showing, growth benchmarks throughout a child's progress. I think that we can absolutely respond with a tentative timeline with some of those dates subject to change. I do know with the report card, we have made some progress already, and having a first meeting. There's another meeting that's going to be relatively soon that Dr. Bird spoke to. I think we can provide a timeline for what we are expecting with a new report card. And I think that we can provide Mr. Cruz updates in terms of where we are in terms of all the curricular alignment and the standardization across those specific pieces. I know the other piece as well, it was around Principal Cave's communication, which I know that he did speak to in terms of how we were going to continue to enhance how we are communicating with families, and how central office is supporting that work and helping Boise Elliott continue to do that specifically. And so I know that I was just trying to narrow it down. I know it's a much bigger question, but I think we can provide all of those pieces in a response to him, and we can make sure that we keep him informed as more things are made available.
Appreciate that. I think unless anyone has a different view here, I think what makes sense for us as a board is to see if we can bring an amendment, if someone wants to bring an amendment forward that amends the resolution to uphold the superintendent's decision on the step 3 appeal, with the understanding that there will be communication to Mr. Cruz with a tentative timeline for the alignment of the report card, and some commitment to keep communication open with him on the action steps, because that is what we're being asked to decide upon. That was the basis for his appeal. Does that make sense to other board members?
Yeah, so moved as an amendment, what you just said.
Director Bailey moves that we amend the resolution 6112 to uphold the superintendent's decision, and have staff commit to providing Mr. Cruz with a timeline and action steps. We have a second?
I second.
Okay, Director DePass seconds. All in favor of the amendment, please say yes.
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 I believe that was, any opposed? Okay, I believe that was, the amendment passes by a vote of 7.
It looks like Julia is having some technical difficulties. She's waving.
Waving like thumbs up, or?
No, we can't hear you.
Director Brim Edwards? I can't see you either.
We can see her. She's trying to call in, I think, Amy, but her sound isn't working. She shows as live, but no sound is coming out.
Okay, well, shall we allow that amendment to pass by a vote of 6-0 and then proceed to the underlying resolution?
She's about to be here. She
Can we
said
just, can we let her in and then vote?
Yeah, let's see if that's happening. Julia, is that you? General Counsel, how shall we proceed here?
she appears to be close to getting in the back door with the phone, here. I think maybe she's here now. Julia, it shows mute. You're muted on the telephone, I think. Julia, if you can hear me, you're showing muted on the new way you can.
Okay.
There
How
you
about
are.
this?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
We can hear you now. Julia, did you hear that amendment?
Yeah, and I was trying to speak to it. Sorry. Now I got to turn this off.
It's like the Twilight Zone sometimes.
Okay, there we go. What I wanted to say before we voted on it, I guess I'm comfortable with adding a timeline, but I just want to be cautious because rolling out a new report card is a huge lift. My kids were in elementary school the last time a standards-based report card was rolled out, and the dialogue that needs to happen between parents and staff around the development and the rolling out of it. I would just be cautious of like us saying, this is the day that staff has to have it done. But just understanding that it's not going to be something that you could probably just pick a date and time in which it can be completed. So I would caution against over rigidity
Fair
in this
point.
particular case.
Fair
But I
point.
Totally
I
agree.
I think we heard Deputy Superintendent Cuellar express that he's comfortable and willing with providing some kind of communication to Mr. Cruz regarding a timeline and action steps in a way that is not overly rigid or prescriptive. Is that fair, Deputy Superintendent Cuellar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So we'll vote again on the amendment that's on the table since we were missing Director Brim Edwards. The board will now vote on amendment to resolution 6112 to uphold the superintendent's decision on a step 3 appeal as long as it includes communication to Mr. Cruz with a timeline for developing a standards-based report card and action steps. Next action steps on that work. So we already had a motion. Director Bailey moved and Director DePass seconded. Let's all in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed? Okay, the amendment prevails by a vote of 7-0. Now the board will vote on the underlying resolution number 6112 as amended to uphold the superintendent's decision on this step 3 appeal. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Director Bailey moves.
Already, you
Actually, it
have
was
the
already,
motion. It was already moved.
was
and
already
seconded,
moved.
baby, at the
The
outset.
underlying resolution?
Yes, you
Yeah.
started there. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then we amended it.
That's right. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the superintendent's decision is upheld by a vote of 7-0. Thank you, everyone. This special meeting of the Board of Education is adjourned. Board members, we will reconvene immediately for our next executive session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff.
Good evening, directors.
Take care.